G'day guys and gal, the Tyranids have a massive advantage over the rest of the factions because GW can just sort of decide how weak or strong the Nids are at any given moment without having to shit on their own lore or treat their audience like idiots. See, the Elder have a set amount of craft worlds, the Imperial territory is already mapped out, the Necron dynasties are established. For one of these factions to be chosen as the setting's big bad, hectic shit in the lore has to go down. For Chaos to become scary again, they had to destroy Cadia and split the galaxy in half. For the Necrons to have their time as the big bads, they had to have their king return and set up the Pariah Nexus. For the Nids to be the big bad, they just need to sort of appear wherever they like to, whenever they want to, and with as many numbers as the writers deem appropriate. They've done this 4 times now. It's not exactly the most engaging cycle, and it doesn't really make the Tyranids a compelling villain, but that's okay. Space bugs of death go brr. Speaking of biomass, you want your biomass to be as delicious as possible for the Tyranids. Good manners and all that. So today I want to talk about my brand Natty Plus subs, specifically the ultimate cholesterol support. About 20 to 25% of all deaths in the US are from heart disease or heart disease adjacent conditions. It's the #1 killer by far. There are many issues that feed into this, such as high blood pressure, diabetes, smoking, but chief of all, high bad cholesterol. The annoying part is that lowering bad cholesterol without supplements is, to put it plainly, lame as. It requires a diet overhaul and not in a fun way, a notable increase in cardio, as well as starting resistance training. Someone with bad cholesterol already probably isn't a ball of energy to begin with, so people will hear this, shrug, continue their life while taking harsh heart medication, and then live in sickness and die early. This is where the Natty Plus Ultimate Cholesterol Support comes in. Using only natural science-backed ingredients, the formula works on multiple cholesterol pathways to lower your LDL and triglycerides, aka bad cholesterol, while also helping increase your HDL, your good cholesterol. As always, here is the proof. There are my bloods before I started taking the Ultimate Cholesterol Support, and here are my bloods 30 days afterwards. My overall cholesterol was down 15%, my LDL was down 18%, my triglycerides, I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, were down 67%. My cholesterol ratios all dramatically improved, and my HDL shot into the reference range. My numbers went from Majorkill, you gotta watch that, to now being oh sweet as. Now the results are awesome because the formula is awesome. We put our ingredients loud and proud at the front of our bottles. Go to our Learn page where we link every ingredient to a study showing its efficacy. We apply this same approach to all of our formulas, only science-backed, proven with blood work from real humans, supplements that work. So to get 20% off your Ultimate Cholesterol Support or anything for the 90 Plus range, then click my link or use code Majorkill below. Today we'll go over each of the 4 Tyrannic Wars, detailing how it started, what happened, and how they ended. Let's get into it. Each Tyrannic War has been getting more and more spicy as the Milky Way has adapted to the Tyranids, causing the Nids to adapt in turn and resulting in this hyper-evolution arms race on both sides. The first Tyrannic War was heavily in the Nids' favour. The Imperium had never faced such a foe, whilst the Nids had seemingly already consumed other galaxies. Here is what happened. After thousands of years of Tyranid probing ships entering the Milky Way and usually crash landing on random planets, a full Tyranid High Fleet arrived, High Fleet Behemoth. The Nids already had most of their strategy locked in, using the Shadow and the Warp to isolate a world, bum rush it with overwhelming numbers, use their elite units to take out enemy strong points, and then no. It was a solid strategy that almost saw them wipe out the Ultramarines. High Fleet Behemoth first invaded the Imperial world of Tyran, an overall well-regarded, well-defended world, thus also giving them the name the Tyranids, a name you'll notice only the Imperium calls them. The Tyranids showed a lot of tactical brilliance when invading Tyran, such as baiting the Imperial ships away from the world and then ambushing them. The Imperium responded by sending a large mixed task force of various Space Marine chapters to suss out what the fuck was going on. They were lucky enough to stumble on the dormant fleet as it was digesting before heading on to its next targets. They were also lucky to experience some wacky lore, such as encountering a Zote, which were Tyranid ambassadors who were good at controlling your thoughts. Fun fact, the Tyranids discontinued the use of Zotes after Space Marines were shown to be too autistic to be mind controlled. Thus, there are still some Zotes in the galaxy who are now free of the hive mind. This task force managed to uncover a shitload of lore about the Nids, such as their link to gene stealers and their ability to absorb DNA to improve themselves. The task force even managed to destroy 1/5 of their fleet before withdrawing. The climax of the first Tyrannic War was the Battle of Macragge. As the Nids were cutting their way through Ultramar, Marneus Calgar summoned the full might of the Ultramarines to his side, which should, according to most lore, be enough to clap infinite cheeks. However, the Ultramarines were very rigid in their battle doctrine, whilst the Nids were adaptable. To beat the Nids, you gotta play dirty, kinda like that Mechanicus Forge world who set their atmosphere on fire to burn up the Nids during an invasion. However, the Ultramarines were just using awesome organized tactics, doing a masterclass of warfare that would have worked incredibly well on anyone else except the Nids. The Tyranids at this point was not splintering its fleet like it would do so in future Tyrannic Wars. Behemoth was one unified mega fleet of Nids. Now the battle for Macragge lore is old, but basically the Ultramarines blew their entire load defending it. Calgar was viciously wounded by the Swarm Lord, the entire elite 1st Company Terminators were killed, with the 3rd and 7th Company also almost being wiped out. The Ultramarines then heavily engaged the High Fleet in space as Macragge was being overrun, with the space battle only being won because the Ultramarines used an Emperor-class ship, a ship they cannot build anymore due to it being so advanced, as a suicide bomber, overloading its warp drives. The Ultramarines then rushed back to Macragge to try save it, fighting viciously against the remaining Nids. They discovered that Macragge had only held due to the first company of elite Terminators fighting back to back, killing enough Nids and holding the rest for long enough for the Ultramarines to return. It cost the first company their lives. The result was an Imperium that was shaken, not stirred. They thought the Ultramarines were the most unassailable of all Space Marines, however the Ultramarines had almost been wiped out, lost their first company, lost an irreplaceable ship, and Manius was now on disability payments. But Behemoth had been wiped out. Woo! Until the Second Tyrannic War, of course. This time a new Hive Fleet entered the Milky Way and had a change of strategy. This was Hive Fleet Kraken. Where Behemoth was all about brute force, Kraken was more about skirmishing, predator units, and precision strikes. It also knew that there was more things to eat in the galaxy than just Space Marines, thus it sought to consume other races as well. They also used gene stealers more effectively to soften up enemy targets. This was most apparent during the Battle of Ikar 4, the first war of the Second Tyrannic War. Now the Ultramarines were extremely cautious of anything Nid related, so when suspicious reports were emerging about a strange uprising on Ikar 4, the Ultramarines went to investigate. It was discovered that the world was being overrun by gene stealers and that a large force of Hive Fleet Kraken was on its way. However, this time Calgar was ready to fuck. The Ultramarines had adapted their strategies, countering the Nids, and in an epic tale of payback, Manius once again faced the Swarm Lord, but this time he won the fight, slaying the monster and breaking the cohesion of the Nids. It was a bittersweet victory though. Ikar 4 had been molested pretty bad. Now the Nids were getting a bit sick of Space Marines, so they turned their attention to the Eldar, most notably Krafeld Yandin. Eldrad and other Farseers warned Yandin of the upcoming danger, but the arrogance of Yandin won out, and they did not flee to a different part of the galaxy in time. As such, they were caught by the bulk of Hive Fleet Kraken. They put up one hell of a defense. Multiple Phoenix Lords, including Marg and Ra, came to their aid. Most of their populace took up the roles as Guardians. Their avatar of Cain was awoken, but for every Eldar, there was like 10 or more Nids. They were obscenely outnumbered, and despite their efforts, they were losing more and more ground as each part of their craft lord was overrun. Eventually, only a few pockets of Eldar resistance remained, including Marg and Ra, obviously. Even the avatar of Cain was slain when it tried to duel the Swarm Lord, but instead got gangbanged by a bunch of Carnifexes. However, as all seemed lost, the exiled Prince Uriel returned at the head of a mighty Corsair host, smashing the Hive Fleet from behind before Uriel entered the Craftworld and took the Swarm Lord on directly, slaying it with the Spear of Twilight, which also happened to be a cursed crone sword created by the gods. Teehee. The Eldar reinforcements combined with the loss of the Swarm Lord and the bioships broke the Tyranids' synaptic cohesion and made them easy pickings for the vengeful Eldar, such as Marg and Ra. This battle killed most of Yandin, resulting in parts of the Craftworld becoming a ghost ship and the population of wraiths to skyrocket. However, most of Kraken was crushed here. The last splinter of Kraken, in a seemingly act of spite, attacked the world of Sothar, the homeworld of the Sires of the Emperor, which was also the world that originally summoned the Tyranids to the Milky Way when the Forest device on it was activated during the Horus Heresy. The Scythes were smashed, only a few companies surviving alongside their gene seed to escape. However, the Nids would pursue even these survivors to try wipe them out, resulting in less than a company surviving and then being forced to basically withdraw from the galaxy and try to rebuild their chapter. However, between Yandin, Ikor 4 and this, alongside a few other engagements, Kraken was smashed and the Second Tyrannic War was over. The Third Tyrannic War saw the introduction of Hive Fleet Leviathan, the greatest of the Tyranid Hive Fleets and likely the bulk of the Tyranid forces entering the galaxy. Leviathan was a jack-of-all-trades Tyranid fleet and became the main force of Nids in the galaxy. See, while there were plenty of other Tyranid Hive Fleets and battles going on, the Tyrannic Wars were a specific sequence of battles, kinda like how despite many hundreds of fights between the Imperium and Chaos, there has only been 13 Black Crusades. The Third Tyrannic War was kicked off with the Battle of Tarsus Ultra, where the Ultramarines led by Uriel Ventress took on a splinter fleet. Now the Ultramarines were outnumbered badly, so they got creative. With Inquisitor Cryptman as their advisor, who himself was a radical expert on Tyranids, they employed multiple strategies, such as pre-blowing up worlds in the Tyranids' path to make them devoid of biomass, thus starving the Nids, as well as blowing up space refineries that would act as makeshift mines. They also managed to capture a lictor and use it to create an anti-Tyranid poison. As the world was being invaded and easily overwhelmed, Ventress and his strike team boarded the main Tyranid ship, injected the Norn Queen of the fleet with the poison, which caused it to violently die and short-circuit the Nids, who began attacking each other or simply froze to death on the world below. Thus, Tarsus Ultra was saved, not by strength of arms, but by dick shot after dick shot. I like it. Although the aftermath would suck, as Ventress was exiled from the chapter as dick shots are not within the Codex Astartes, and Tarsus Ultra would be blown up by the Iron Warriors soon after this anyway. So yeah, that's fun. The final battle of the Third Tyrannic War was more like 5 battles in one, but basically Leviathan got really horny for the Blood Angels, so sent the bulk of its fleet towards Baal. This would be known as the Cryptus campaign. The Cryptus campaign would be the prelude, in which various Blood Angel worlds were pre-fortified. However, they were getting overwhelmed anyway. The Blood Angels were desperately trying to hold back the Nids. They would win victory after victory, but the Nids were endless. Then the Necrons got involved, an alliance built from desperation. Saw the Necrons and Blood Angels face the Nids together. Now, although the Blood Angels technically won, the losses were obscene on their side, and the hive mind genuinely started to take things personally. It calculated that if it kept pushing towards Bal, it would consume it and would end up with a net loss of biomass. However, it was so pissed off that it accepted that, one of the few times the hive mind acted out of vendetta rather than practical predator instincts. Now, the devastation of Bal itself was a massive lore event that I'll cover in its own video when I read the book, but long story short, the Blood Angels gather almost their entire might, including their successor chapters to face the Nids. And it's still not enough. They lose fuck tons of warriors, including entire successor chapters, and only really survive because Kabunda arrives to kill Tyranids, as only he can kill the Blood Angels, not these fucking space bugs, and then the Great Rift opens, which knocks out the hive mind, and then Gilliman arrives to clean up. Without those three factors, the entire bloodline of Sanguinius would have ended, and Sanguinius' very corpse, kept on Bal, would have been consumed. That battle saw Leviathan smashed, with only a few splinters surviving, and the end of the Third Tyrannic War. The Fourth Tyrannic War is ongoing and appears to be basically endless, as the rest of Leviathan has arrived, attacking the galaxy from all sides, including from above and below the galactic plane. The Imperium is just trying to hold them where they can, each victory being more so whack-a-mole rather than being decisive. They are also pre-exterminating many civilized worlds instead of defending them to try to deny the Tyranids biomass. The Nid forces are so spread out, the war cannot be ended in 1, 2, or even 3 decisive victories. The only blessing is that the Imperium isn't fighting the Tyranids alone. The Tau, Orcs, Leagues of Votann, Eldar, and even Chaos are all engaged in large-scale warfare with Leviathan. However, the Tyranids have officially infested the galaxy, and nothing short of someone rediscovering the STC to Phosphex is going to stop them. If you enjoyed the video and you want to support the channel and improve your biomass, then pick up the Natty Plus Ultimate Cholesterol Support, or any Natty Plus product. Link or code Majorkill for 20% off. Join the Discord for more memes, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.